Shin was a weak and shy boy with very little confidence. People saw him as a boring nerd with no charm. His life suddenly changes when a strange alien parasite attacks him and takes over his right hand. At first, Shin is scared and wants to get rid of the creature, but slowly, he begins to accept it. This strange partnership will later make him fight other dangerous parasites that secretly eat humans. The story begins when Shin wakes up one morning. As he opens his eyes, he hears a faint voice saying that it is unfortunate that it failed. This scares him, but he quickly thinks it must have been a strange dream from the night before. He goes downstairs for breakfast, where his parents ask if he is feeling okay. They say he was acting very strangely the previous night. Shin cannot clearly remember what happened, which confuses him. Feeling uncomfortable, he decides to skip breakfast and leave for school. While walking to school, his crush Morirano suddenly jumps from behind to scare him. But before he can react, his right hand moves by itself and blocks her attack. Morirano is surprised by his quick reflexes. Shin is confused and says that his hand moved on its own. Right after that, Shin acts strangely around her. Morirano becomes embarrassed and slaps him before running away. Their friend Takai sees this and jokingly says that this is what happens when someone has no experience with girls. At school, Shin quickly falls asleep in class because he did not sleep well the previous night. In his sleep, he remembers what really happened. While he was sleeping, a strange parasite tried to enter his brain through his ear, but his earphones blocked the way. Then the parasite tried to enter through his nose, but Shin sneezed and woke up. For a moment, he saw the creature and thought it was a snake. Suddenly, it jumped onto him and started digging into his right hand. Shin quickly tied his arm tightly with his earphone cord, which stopped the parasite from spreading further into his body. His parents rushed into the room after hearing the noise. When Shin tried to explain what happened, his father thought he was imagining things and joked that he must be seeing things. Shin suddenly wakes up from this memory and realizes he is in class. His teacher is standing in front of him, angry because Shin was using his phone during the lesson. Shin tries to explain, but the teacher does not believe him. Later, Morirano is still angry at him, and Takai tries to calm things down because she is worried about Shin. Feeling stressed and confused, Shin decides to go home early. On the way home, he sees a girl crossing the street carelessly while a car is coming fast toward her. Without thinking, Shin runs forward to protect her. To his shock, his right hand stops the moving car. Shin cannot believe what he just did. When he looks at his hand, it suddenly changes shape and a strange eye appears in his palm. A moment later, it returns to normal. Completely frightened, Shin runs home. In his room, he panics and tries to stab his right hand. Suddenly, the hand transforms into a strange alien creature that speaks in broken sentences. It explains that it failed to take control of his brain and only managed to take over his right hand after consuming it. Shin tries to attack it again, but the creature easily breaks the knife. Then it calmly asks Shin to teach it how to speak properly because it is still learning. After that, it suddenly falls asleep and his hand returns to normal. The next morning, Shin wakes up and sees the alien reading books to learn about the world. It can now speak clearly and shows great intelligence. When Shin asks where it came from, the creature says it does not know. It only remembers waking up inside his arm and feeling disappointed because it failed to take over his brain. This makes Shin panic even more. However, the alien quickly explains that it cannot do anything now because it has already eaten his arm and replaced it. If it had taken over his head instead, then it would have controlled his whole body. Shin says he will go to the hospital right away and have his strange right hand cut off, but the alien says that would be a terrible idea. It survives by using Shin's nutrients, so if the hand is cut off, it will die. Shin would also lose his arm forever. The creature even says that his hand now has a mouth and can change its shape. Shin angrily calls it a parasite. The creature replies that they should simply cooperate and live together. Right after saying this, the parasite suddenly becomes tired and falls asleep, and Shin's hand returns to normal. Later, Shin goes downstairs for breakfast. While eating, he hears his father reading the newspaper. His father talks about a series of terrible and violent crimes called the mincemeat murders. These strange murders have been happening recently. After breakfast, Shin heads to school. On the way, he thinks that maybe he should go to the police and tell them everything about the alien in his hand. However, the parasite quickly warns him that this is a bad idea. If the authorities find out, scientists might capture them and use them for experiments. Suddenly, the parasite says that another one of its kind is nearby. It explains that parasites can sense each other through brain waves. Curious but nervous, Shin follows the direction where the parasite is sensing the other one. Soon he becomes scared because the other parasite might have taken over a human body. He does not know what he might see. His Parasyte continues guiding him, and they finally find a strange scene. A dog is eating the dead body of another dog. Shin is confused at first, but then he realizes the dog has been taken over by a parasite. The parasite dog looks at Shin's right hand and says that it also failed to take over the brain. At that moment, Shin's parasite senses its killing intent and quickly pulls Shin away to a safer place. Meanwhile, the parasite dog suddenly changes its body, grows wings, and flies into the sky. It soon finds Shin and his parasite hiding in a park. Shin's parasite says they must fight it there. Without wasting time, it attacks the flying dog with sharp tentacles. In one quick and precise strike, it pierces the dog's heart and kills it instantly. Everything happens so fast that Shin can hardly understand what just happened. The parasite calmly watches the dead dog's body shrink and die. It coldly says the dog lost because it did not study enough. Shin realizes that the creature inside his arm has no emotions and thinks like a cold insect. Later, Shin decides not to report the alien to the authorities. After what happened with the dog, he understands that he might be in danger without it. Since calling it the alien feels strange, he decides to give it a name. The creature suggests the name Migi, which means right in Japanese. It also says that it does not really care about names because it is neither a human nor a pet. With Migi's help, Shin soon becomes much better at sports, which surprises everyone at school. Even Morirano begins to notice him more. However, the class bully becomes jealous because he also likes her. After a game, their friend Takai brings Morirano to talk with Shin so they can forget their earlier argument. Shin finally apologizes to her. Morirano forgives him, but only if he agrees to take her out for dessert next Sunday. Morirano says she is glad that Shin apologized, but she also notices that something about him feels different now. After she leaves, Migi tells Shin that his heart rate became very high while he was talking to her. Migi concludes that Shin clearly likes the girl. At that moment, the class bully calls Shin and angrily confronts him for getting Morirano's attention. Shin tries to avoid the fight and says he cannot control what Morirano does. However, the bully suddenly attacks him. Shin becomes worried that Migi might react violently and seriously hurt the boy. Luckily, Migi holds back and only stretches out like a punch to knock the bully down. This is enough to scare the bully, and he quickly runs away. Later, Takai starts talking about the brutal mincemeat murders, the same crimes Shin's father mentioned earlier. No one knows who is responsible, but similar cases are happening all around the world. Takai thinks the situation is very suspicious. Hearing this, Shin suddenly realizes that the parasites must be behind the murders. When Shin gets home, he searches for more information about the crimes. He asks Migi about it, and Migi agrees that the murders are most likely done by parasites like him. Migi explains that parasites usually eat the same species as their host. Since they take over human bodies, it is natural for them to eat humans. Shin becomes very worried after hearing this. He wonders if he should tell the world about the parasites and try to save humanity, but Migi does not understand why he is thinking like that. According to Migi, parasites simply eat to survive, just like other living things in nature. Shin argues that human life is valuable. However, Migi replies that the only lives he cares about are his own and Shin's because he needs Shin to survive. Shin angrily calls him an insect and a parasite. Migi warns him that if he tries to expose him, he will cut off Shin's tongue so he cannot tell anyone. Terrified by this threat, Shin gives up the idea. Migi continues the argument and points out that humans eat many kinds of animals, while parasites only eat a few. From his point of view, humans might actually be worse. The next day, another parasite notices Shin and Migi. Migi senses it immediately and warns Shin they cannot find the parasite in the busy market, so Migi suggests going somewhere quieter. Shin agrees and says he wants to meet the other parasite. Migi thinks this is very dangerous and asks why Shin is not afraid. Shin answers that he wants to understand the parasites better so he can protect humans. Soon the other parasite appears in front of them. After looking at Shin's hand, it realizes that the parasite failed to take over his brain. Because Shin's human mind is still in control, the man considers them dangerous. The parasite calmly offers Migi a deal. He tells Migi to leave Shin and move into his body instead. To prove his idea, he transforms his body, cuts off his own hand, and invites Migi to join him so they can become stronger together. Shin panics and worries that Migi might accept the offer, but Migi does not move. The other parasite becomes impatient and suddenly attacks them. Migi reacts instantly and defeats him. The enemy parasite is shocked shocked that he lost so quickly. Shin thanks Miggy for saving his life. However, Miggy calmly replies that he was not even sure if switching hosts was possible, so defeating him was simply the safest choice. The next day, Shin goes on a dessert date with Morirano. During their conversation, she says her parents are very scared because of the recent murders. Shin quietly wonders how she would react if she ever learned about Miggy. After eating dessert, they walk through a nearby park. There they see a group of boys burying a cat in the sand and throwing stones at it for fun. Morirano feels very upset by this cruel act and says she cannot watch it. She wants to leave, but Shin steps forward instead, showing his kindness. He rescues the cat and tells the boys to stop hurting innocent animals. The boys laugh at him and throw stones at him as he turns back, but Miggy quickly catches every stone before they can hit Shin. Shin then gives the boys a very intense stare, which scares them completely. The boys quickly run away from the park. Morirano is impressed by Shin's courage. She happily grabs his hand, but suddenly she feels that something is strange about him. Because of that strange feeling, she quickly lets go of his right hand and instead holds his left hand. A few days pass, and the number of mincemeat murder cases continues to increase. The news keeps reporting brutal killings, which makes Shin feel sick and worried. At the same time, Morirano starts to notice that Shin is slowly becoming more distant and different from the person she used to know. One morning, while Shin is walking to school, Miggy suddenly senses another parasite nearby. Shin immediately becomes alert, but when Miggy points toward the school building, Shin begins to panic even more. At school, Shin nervously looks around the hallways, trying to find the parasite. Miggy warns him not to act suspicious because the other parasite might sense them too. Just then, a new teacher is introduced to the class. Her name is Miss Tamia. The moment she enters the classroom, Miggy confirms that she is the parasite. Things become even worse when they learn that Miss Tamia will be Morirano's homeroom teacher. Shin feels extremely uneasy. Miggy tells him not to stare at her, but Shin cannot help himself. Tamia notices him looking at her and quickly realizes that he is connected to a parasite too. Later during sports class, Miggy explains that Tamia must be very intelligent. She has taken over a human life and is now living normally as a teacher without anyone noticing. Shin wonders if she plans to eat the students at school. However, Miggy says she would not risk revealing her identity by attacking people so close to her. During another class, while Tamia is teaching, Miggy suddenly falls asleep. Shin becomes very nervous because he feels helpless without Miggy. He struggles to stay calm during the rest of the lesson. After the class ends, Tamia calmly tells Shin to come to the office later. Some boys in the class start teasing him, joking that the new teacher likes him. Shin angrily tells them to stop because they do not understand how serious his situation is. Later, Shin goes to the office, and luckily, Miggy wakes up just in time. Tamia calmly explains that she does not want to fight him. Instead, she invites Shin to meet her after school so they can talk properly. Miggy quickly agrees, but Shin is suspicious and worries that it might be a trap. After school, Shin meets Tamia again. Miggy suddenly senses another parasite nearby. Soon Tamia arrives with a man she calls Mr. A. Tension quickly rises between him and Miggy, but Tamia stops them from fighting. They sit down and talk. Tamia asks Shin what he thinks parasites are. Shin honestly answers that they are monsters who eat humans. Tamia understands his point, but she believes their existence may be more complicated. She then reveals something shocking. She says that she and Mr. A reproduced a few weeks ago, and now she is pregnant. Shin is horrified and wonders what kind of creature she is carrying. Miggy carefully observes and says that the baby inside her is actually a normal human child. Shin still does not trust them. During the conversation, Mr. A becomes bored and stands up. He says he will continue killing and eating humans like before and sees Shin as a possible threat. After he leaves, Tamia warns Shin not to provoke her. She says she could easily kill everyone in a classroom, including Morirano. However, she says that for now, she prefers peace and wants to keep her identity hidden. The next day at school, Takai tells Shin that she saw him on the bus the previous evening and that she and Morirano were worried about him. Shin hides the truth. Suddenly, Miggy quietly warns him that they are under attack. Tamia also realizes that the parasite inside the school is Mr. A. She calmly tells her students to study on their own and quietly steps outside the classroom. Meanwhile, Mr. A has already started attacking people inside the school. Shin knows he cannot ignore this and decides he must stop him. Miggy believes Tamia will not interfere because she usually acts logically and avoids choosing sides. Just then, an announcement comes through the school intercom, telling all students to evacuate the building immediately. Miggy suggests a plan to defeat meet Mr. A. He says they should hide among the escaping students and use the crowd as a distraction before attacking. Shin becomes angry when he hears this idea. He refuses to risk innocent people's lives just to win a fight. Instead, he runs upstairs alone to face the danger. On the way, he runs into Morirano. She grabs his arm and asks what is going on, but Shin pushes her away and tells her to stay far from him. He quickly continues upstairs and enters an empty classroom. Migi says his earlier plan would have been more effective, but Shin insists on fighting in a more human way. Migi says nothing, but he understands that humans often act based on emotions instead of logic. Shin quickly builds a barricade using desks and chairs to block the door. Then he asks Migi if he is angry because his plan was rejected. Migi says there is no time to worry about that and begins thinking of another strategy. He explains that the difference between them and Mr. A is that there are two of them working together. Migi sharpens a piece of a chair leg into a sharp wooden spike and gives it to Shin as a weapon. He explains that Mr. A underestimates humans, so if Shin attacks at the right moment, they might win. Shin hides the weapon in his sleeve. Suddenly, Mr. A crashes through the window from the floor below. The broken desks and tables now trap Shin inside the classroom. Mr. A mocks Shin and says that, except for his right hand, the rest of his body is weak and scared. Shin knows that part is true. However, he remembers Migi's warning that if he loses his courage, Migi's abilities will also be limited, so he forces himself to calm down. Mr. A suddenly attacks them with sharp tentacles, but Migi blocks every strike. Shin remembers the plan. Migi will focus on defense, while Shin quietly moves closer to attack. Because Mr. A believes humans are weak, he ignores Shin completely. That becomes his biggest mistake. At the perfect moment, Shin stabs him in the chest with the wooden spike. Mr. A tries to fight back, but Migi blocks his attacks. Shin's strike has already damaged an important artery in his heart, and blood begins pouring out quickly. Even so, Mr. A manages to throw Shin aside and pushes the spike through his body to slow the bleeding. As he struggles to move away, Migi tells Shin they must finish him now. Shin hesitates because he does not want to kill anyone. Migi reminds him that Mr. A is not human. Meanwhile, Mr. A realizes his body is dying. As a last attempt, he decides to find a new host and walks toward Tamiya's office. But Tamiya suddenly appears and reveals that she left oxygen cylinders open in the room. The oxygen causes a massive explosion that kills Mr. A before the police arrive. After this event, Shin feels deeply traumatized. Even though time passes, he cannot forget that he stabbed a human body. Meanwhile, Tamiya faces trouble with the school because she refuses to reveal the father of her baby. Instead of arguing with the administration, she decides to quit her job and change her identity. Before leaving, she meets Shin one last time. She tells him that since she is abandoning her identity as Tamiya, she no longer needs to protect the people connected to that life. That includes him. Shin becomes very nervous after hearing Tamiya's words. He asks her why she and the other parasites eat humans. Shin explains that Migi survives by taking nutrients from his body, so maybe other parasites could also live by eating different kinds of food. Tamiya calmly replies that he might be right, but eating humans feels natural to them. She says it is similar to how bees fly and spiders spin webs. According to her, every living creature on Earth follows a purpose. Parasites simply follow their instinct. Tamiya explains that when she first took over a human body, she immediately felt that her purpose was to eat other humans. Shin feels terrified hearing this, but he still asks what she plans to do with the baby she is carrying. Tamiya answers coldly that she will give birth to the baby and then use it for experiments. If the child is not useful, she says she will eat it. Shin becomes furious after hearing that. Tamiya quickly senses his anger and prepares to fight. She transforms her body to attack him. Migi immediately realizes that they cannot defeat her because she can change her body in two ways at the same time. This means she is more advanced than him. However, Tamiya suddenly notices that Shin is not a completely normal human anymore. Because of his strange connection with Migi, she decides to let him live. She believes studying him might help her understand more about parasites and humans. Later that night, Tamiya receives an unexpected visit. It is the real Tamiya's mother. The old woman quickly realizes that the person in front of her is not her daughter. She demands to know who she is and where her daughter is. Tamiya is shocked because she never thought a normal human could see through her disguise. When the woman tries to call the police, Tamiya kills her before she can do it. Afterward, Tamiya becomes curious about how the woman noticed the truth and wonders if she had some special ability. The next morning, Shin wakes up and realizes that Migi is missing from his body. He panics until he sees Migi Miggy moving around the room on his own. Miggy then reattaches to his arm and explains that he discovered he can move away from Shin for about 3 minutes. Shin becomes worried and asks if Miggy plans to take over his brain. Miggy calmly replies that it is impossible because he developed only as an arm and cannot control a brain. However, this makes Shin think about something even scarier. He wonders if other parasites who control brains could switch heads with other bodies. Miggy says that might be possible. Later, Shin goes downstairs for breakfast. His parents tell him they are planning to go on a trip. Shin becomes worried and says traveling to unknown places might be dangerous. His mother listens to him and even considers canceling the trip. She gently asks if something has been bothering him lately, but Shin does not want to reveal the truth about Miggy, so he quickly leaves for school. Shin keeps Miggy a secret because he fears that Miggy might hurt his parents if they become a threat to his survival. Miggy does not understand human emotions and only cares about staying alive. Later, Miggy starts researching guns for possible future fights. He also tells Shin not to worry too much about his parents. Parasites usually stay in crowded cities where there are many humans to hunt. They also prefer attacking people who are alone. Because of this, Miggy believes Shin's parents might actually be safer during their trip than they are in the city. Shin feels a little relieved after hearing that. Just then, his mother enters his room. Shin quickly hides Miggy. She asks who he was talking to. Shin nervously says he was talking to himself and angrily tells her to knock before entering next time. His mother feels hurt by his harsh words and quietly leaves the room. Later, she sadly tells Shin's father that their son shouted at her. Shin dad tells her that it happened because she interrupted him at a very awkward moment. Later that day, he tells his parents that he has changed his mind and now thinks it is a good idea for them to go on the trip. His mother, Nabuko, gets upset at his sudden change. She angrily asks what is wrong with him and even starts crying. She says it feels like he is not the same son anymore. Shin still does not want to tell her about Miggy, so he lies. He says that he was only worried about feeling lonely without them, but then he realized he could just invite some friends over if he felt lonely. After saying that, he goes back to his room and his parents believe his explanation. A week later, his parents leave for their trip. Nabuko is very excited because she has not had a long vacation in many years. At the same time, somewhere else, a man is driving with his new girlfriend, but he does not know that she is actually a parasite. She does not understand basic human things like how seatbelts work. While he is driving, she distracts him and the car rolls down a hill. Both of them are badly injured in the crash. When the parasite realizes that her host body will not survive, she becomes desperate. She attacks the man and takes over his body instead. The takeover is not perfect, but at least she can still move. Meanwhile, Shin is walking to school and asks Miggy what Tamia meant when she called him impure. Miggy explains that some of his cells entered Shin's bloodstream and even reached his brain, so parts of Shin's body have changed. Shin is shocked and tries to convince himself that he is still a normal human. Just then, he sees a group of boys beating up the school bully. Shin tries to stop them, but they punch him and tell him to stay out of it. Shin remembers that Miggy once said humans are different from parasites because they help others even when it does not benefit them. Wanting to prove he is still human, Shin stands up for the bully again. The gang leader, Mitsuo, hits him, but before things get worse, a girl named Kana arrives and tells everyone to stop. She calls Shin stupid, but when she looks at him closely, she senses something strange inside him. She notices something unusual and becomes scared, then quickly leaves. At school, Shin gets praised for defending his classmate. Later, Shin and Murano meet Kana again. She asks why he did not run away earlier. Shin says helping a classmate in trouble is the right thing to do, but Kana thinks he is pretending and hiding something. Meanwhile, Mitsuo becomes jealous because Kana is paying attention to Shin. Wanting revenge, he and his gang attack Shin again and kidnap Murano. Shin follows them and asks them to let her go, but Mitsuo starts beating him. Migi wants to help, but Shin stops him because he wants to handle it himself. Even though he is weaker, Shin keeps fighting because he believes humans fight for others. Soon, Kana arrives and stops them. Then some boys from Shin's school appear and start fighting Mitsuo's gang. During the chaos, Shin escapes with Murano. She walks him home, treats his wounds, and tells him he looked really cool earlier. Shin gets excited and asks Murano if she wants to stay at his house since his parents are not home, but she decides to go back to her own house. Migi feels disappointed and says he wanted to observe human reproduction. Shin gets annoyed and tells him to be quiet and go to sleep. Just then, Kana suddenly appears and asks Shin who he was talking to. Shin avoids the question. Kana apologizes for how she acted earlier and says she wants to be friends with him. Shin agrees because he does not see any problem with that. But when they shake hands, Kana feels something strange from his right hand. Shin notices that she looks uncomfortable, so he quickly pulls his hand back and rushes inside his house. Inside, Migi warns Shin to stay away from Kana because she seems very perceptive. He thinks she can sense the special signal that parasites give off to find each other. Migi says that Murano also has a similar ability, but Kana's instinct is much stronger. Because of this, Migi believes Kana could be very dangerous. Shin agrees with him. Somewhere else, the parasite that took over the injured man's body is struggling because it is not used to having a male body. It wants a woman's body again and decides to take over the first woman it finds. Sadly, Shin's parents are not far away from the monster. They are standing near a cliff and enjoying the sunset. Suddenly, the parasite appears and kills Nabuko right in front of Kazu. Later, Shin receives a phone call from his injured father. Kazu tells him that a monster attacked his mother and says he needs to contact the police. After saying that, the call suddenly ends. Shin becomes very worried and starts to panic. He fears that the monster might be a parasite, but he does not even know where his parents are. Exhausted and scared, he eventually falls asleep while waiting for more news. The next morning, Migi suddenly tells him that another alien is nearby. Shin gets angry and blames Migi, saying his parents are in danger, even though Migi said they would be safe near the beach. Migi calmly replies that he only spoke based on probability and never said anything was completely certain. He then tells Shin to focus on the enemy in front of them. Shin grabs a knife, ready to help fight. Soon the door unlocks and someone enters the house. Shin is ready to attack, but he becomes shocked when he sees his mother walk in. Deep inside, he knows something is wrong, but he cannot accept it. Confused and shaking, he welcomes Nabuko home and asks why she is not with his father. Migi quietly tells him that this is not his mother, but a parasite. Shin refuses to believe it. In his confusion, Shin holds the knife in front of Migi, stopping him from transforming. He desperately calls out to his mother, but the parasite does not care about his feelings. Suddenly, she transforms and stabs Shin straight through the heart. Shin collapses to the floor while still unable to accept the truth. The parasite leaves, believing Shin will die, but Migi realizes there is still a chance to save him. Shin's heart is badly damaged, so Migi creates a new one and places it inside his chest, manually making it beat. While Shin remains unconscious, Migi slowly heals him and eventually returns to his right arm. Shin stays unconscious for several days, which makes Murano worried. Meanwhile, Migi continues taking care of him and even feeds him while he sleeps. Finally, after a few days, Shin wakes up, although he is still very weak. Soon he realizes that he no longer needs his glasses, which feels very strange to him. Shin decides to wash up, and while doing that, he notices a scar on his chest. The scar reminds him of the terrible incident. His heart suddenly hurts, and he breaks down because of the painful memory. Just then, the phone rings. When he answers it, he learns that his father has been admitted to a hospital. Shin feels relieved that his father is still alive and quickly leaves to see him. Outside, Murano is waiting for him. When she sees Shin, she says she was very worried about him, but Shin seems cold and distant. He only tells her that his father is injured and he is going to the hospital. Murano says his mother must be dealing with everything alone, and those words hurt Shin even more. Still, he walks away and says he will not return to school for a while. Murano asks if he will come back someday, but Shin only gives a sad smile and leaves. In his heart, he promises to kill the parasite that took his mother's form. On the train, Shin keeps thinking about finding the parasite before it reaches his father. Meanwhile, his father Kazu is in the hospital. The police come to question him about the accident and his wife. Kazu tells them that Nabuko died, but the police say she is actually alive and that she returned to the hotel and checked out by herself. Kazu becomes very scared and says that woman is not his wife but an imposter. However, the police say the burn mark on her hand proves her identity. A psychiatrist tells Kazu that he is only imagining things because of the trauma from the accident, and somehow Kazu begins to doubt himself. Soon, Shin arrives at the hospital. When he enters the room, Kazu is surprised but happy to see him. Shin wants to talk about what happened to his mother, but he cannot say the words because it hurts too much. Even though Shin has no tears, Kazu quietly says that Nabuko has been missing since the accident. Shin becomes shocked and reminds him about the monster, but Kazu says he must be confused because he hit his head during the accident. Shin gets angry and insists that the monster killed his mother. Kazu then scolds him while holding back tears. Shin finally understands that his father knows the truth but is pretending not to. Shin decides he must deal with the parasite himself, but he also knows he cannot tell anyone the truth. He plans to stay at the hospital, but Kazu suggests a nearby hotel only 300 meters away so Shin can rest. Shin agrees, though he worries because that place is still within Miggy's range to detect enemies, and Miggy is currently asleep. At the hotel, Shin meets a girl he saw earlier on the train, and she shows him inside. From his room, Shin watches the hospital carefully. He also realizes that his hearing and other senses have become much stronger. Later, Miggy wakes up and explains that he repaired Shin's body, but both of them have changed. Now, Miggy must sleep for 4 hours every day. During that time, he cannot wake up, even if danger appears. If an enemy attacks then, they will both die. Shin asks why Miggy did not tell him earlier. Miggy explains that after his mother's death, Shin started blaming all parasites, so it felt dangerous to reveal a weakness. Shin says he does not see Miggy as an enemy because Miggy saved his life. Miggy calmly replies that he only did it to save himself. The next morning, Shin goes to check on his father and then waits outside while Miggy sleeps. Suddenly, Miggy wakes and warns him that a parasite is at the beach. Shin immediately runs toward it. The girl from the hotel follows and tells him there is a wall blocking the way, so they must go around it to reach the beach. Shin says it is easy and quickly jumps over the wall. On the other side, he sees someone walking along the beach and soon realizes that the person is a parasite. Filled with anger, Shin starts chasing him, ready to kill. But when he finally catches up, he notices that the man is not his mother. It is just a normal-looking man, which confuses Shin. Still, he believes the man must be an alien and prepares to attack him. The man quickly panics and begs Shin to stop. At that moment, Miggy stops Shin and says the man still has a human brain. This makes Shin even more confused. Suddenly, the man's jaw changes shape and turns into a parasite. It starts talking. Shin is shocked because he has never seen something like this before. The strange part is that both the man and the parasite are using the same mouth and even arguing about who gets to speak. Miggy then explains the situation. He says the man's brain is still human, but the area from the jaw down to the chest belongs to the parasite. The parasite itself confirms that they are similar to Shin and Miggy in some ways. Later, they sit down and start talking. The man begins telling his story. He says his wife left him and he started feeling like a useless person who could not make any decisions in life. One day, he decided to end his life by jumping into the sea. However, he did not have the courage to do it and just sat there for a long time. During that time, a parasite attacked him. While he struggled, both of them fell into the water. The jaw parasite continues the story. It says it first tried to reach the man's brain, but it realized the host was drowning, and if the host died, it would die too. So instead, it turned into a breathing tube and helped the man survive. That is how they ended up sharing the same body. The man then introduces himself as Uda, and the parasite calls itself Joe, which is a play on the word jaw. They go together to the hospital, where Shin explains his own story. After hearing it, Uda starts crying, while Joe makes fun of him for being too emotional. Joe also says he learned many things by watching movies, which is why he talks so much. Uda then promises to help Shin if he ever finds the enemy parasite. Shin is happy to accept his help. That night, Miggy wakes Shin up and says there is something important he forgot to mention earlier. He reminds Shin about how fast he ran and how high he jumped that day. Miggy explains that his body can divide into many small parts, and each part can think by itself. Usually, very small parts die quickly, so he always orders them to return to his body. However, when Shin's heart was damaged, Miggy used many small pieces of himself to repair it. Those pieces stayed inside Shin's body and became part of his bloodstream. Because of that, almost 30% of Shin's body is now made of parasite cells. Shin becomes worried and asks if those cells reached his brain. Miggy says he is not sure and asks if Shin has noticed anything strange. Shin remembers that when he was at the hospital, he felt very sad but could not cry. This makes him fear that he might be slowly losing his humanity. The next day, the girl from the hotel asks if he looks like a normal person. She says yes, but she also tells him it feels like he is hiding deep pain inside. Just then, Shin receives a call from Uda. Uda says he has found the enemy parasite and will try to delay her. Shin warns him that the enemy is very dangerous. While Uda runs away, the parasite calmly follows him. Shin also runs to help, but suddenly Miggy falls asleep halfway. Miggy suddenly turns into a weapon and tells Shin that the rest of the fight is up to him. At the same time, Uda is trapped near a cliff when the parasite using Nabuko's body arrives. She is surprised to see another host whose human brain is still alive, so she decides to kill him. She transforms her body into a weapon. Joe is impressed because he wishes he could transform like that too. The fight begins, but Joe can only defend because he is awkwardly attached to Uda's jaw. They are quickly pushed back. Soon the parasite stabs Uda in the heart and throws him down the cliff, saying that even a hybrid like him cannot survive that. Uda and Joe lose consciousness, and the parasite walks away. But suddenly, she senses another weak parasite signal nearby. She is shocked to see Shin still alive and says she should have destroyed his head earlier. Shin becomes furious and tells her to stop using his mother's voice while talking about killing him. Shin decides to fight her. When she transforms, he cannot even look at her face. She suddenly attacks, but Shin can clearly see her movements now. He easily dodges and jumps behind her. She is surprised that Shin can move so fast. Shin blocks her attacks and reaches the edge of the cliff, where he sees Uda lying injured. Thinking that the only person who understood him is now dead makes Shin extremely angry. Filled with rage, Shin rushes forward and lands several fast strikes, injuring the parasite. He cuts off her tentacles and tries to attack her head, but when he moves in to finish her, she uses her chest to block the attack. When Shin sees the burn mark on her body, memories of his real mother come rushing back, and he hesitates. The parasite quickly takes advantage of that moment and injures Shin. She begins to heal herself and stands up again. Just when things look bad for Shin, her head is suddenly cut apart, and her body falls into the sea. Uda and Joe were still alive and managed to climb back up. They attacked her from behind and killed her. Uda tells Shin that the woman was not his real mother, so he should not blame himself. The parasite's body sinks into the ocean. Shin looks at the sea and feels that everything is finally over, but something inside him still feels broken. Later, Kazu leaves the hospital, and they both return to the same cliff where everything happened. Kazu tells Shin that his mother always loved him. Shin asks if she suffered when she died. Kazu says it all happened very quickly, and that her death was painless. Kazu starts crying, but Shin feels a little relieved knowing his mother did not suffer. All the stress he was holding inside finally disappears, and he falls asleep right there. After some time, Shin returns to the city. Both Murano and Kana notice that something about him has changed. Murano is surprised because Shin looks taller and more mature, almost like he suddenly grew up. At the same time, Tamiya finds a new host by taking over a teenage boy's body. She tells him to watch Shin carefully, but not to kill him. The boy asks why Shin is so important. Tamiya explains that Shin is dangerous, but also valuable because studying him may help them understand their species better. Meanwhile, Kana becomes more interested in Shin and even keeps his photo as her phone wallpaper. This makes Mitsuo jealous, so he goes to Shin's school to fight him, but Shin is no longer the same weak boy. When Mitsuo attacks, Shin easily dodges and knocks him down without seriously hurting him. Just then, Murano arrives. Shin decides to leave, but Murano notices the big change in him. She asks if something happened during the trip and whether he is still the same Shin. Shin quietly replies that he is asking himself the same question. Later, Shin goes on a date with Murano at a busy market. At the same place, Kana is also there. She somehow senses that Shin will appear and even predicts he will come up the stairs near her. Her guess turns out to be correct. She gets excited when she sees him, but her mood quickly drops when she notices Murano beside him. After the date, Shin returns home and sees that his father is still very depressed. Kazu has even started drinking a lot. Shin calmly tells him that he should hire a housekeeper to manage things at home, but Kazu becomes upset and says Shin sounds cold and heartless now. He tells Shin to just do whatever he wants. The next day, while walking to school with Murano, Shin decides to test his new super hearing. Suddenly, he hears someone crying for help. He runs toward the sound and finds a badly injured puppy lying on the street. Migi says the puppy is too wounded to survive. Shin gently picks it up and takes it to a quiet garden so it can spend its last moments peacefully. Murano soon arrives there as well. She says she thought Shin had changed, but seeing him care for the puppy makes her believe he is still kind. However, when the puppy finally dies, Shin throws its body into a trash bin. Murano is shocked and cannot understand how he could do that. Shin calmly explains that it is no longer a puppy, only a dead body now. Murano becomes very upset and says he really has changed. She runs away in tears. Shin does not even understand what he did wrong, so he asks Migi for advice. Migi explains that, logically, Shin did nothing wrong, but the old Shin would never have spoken about a puppy like that. Hearing this, Shin realizes his mistake. Later he returns to the garden and properly buries the puppy, even though he still thinks about how its body will help the tree grow. Later, Shin waits outside Murano's class to talk to her, but she runs away when she sees him. Shin decides to give her some space. Just then, Migi senses another parasite nearby. However, he says this one does not seem like an enemy and might want to talk peacefully. Soon the parasite appears, but before they can talk, the school bully interrupts them and the parasite quickly punches him aside. side. He then introduces himself as Hideo. He says he wants to become friends with Shin and Migi. Shin is surprised by this. Hideo explains that they even have gym class together and wants to test Shin's abilities. During gym class, they race each other. Shin holds back his speed so he does not look strange, but Hideo runs at full speed and almost breaks a national record. Later, Hideo tells Shin that he enjoys sports and says he was sent by Tamiya, though she now uses a different name. However, he says he was not sent to kill Shin. In fact, he claims he has not harmed humans for months because he found another kind of meat to eat. He believes some parasites want to live peacefully with humans. Migi partly believes him, but stops the conversation because he is about to fall asleep. Later, Shin tries again to talk with Murano, but when she sees the anger on his face, she quietly walks away. At the same time, Kana waits after school because she believes Shin is her soulmate. She says she has a special ability that helps her sense where he is. When she feels his presence and happily calls out, the person who appeared is actually Hideo. Confused but curious, Hideo grabs her and demands to know how she sensed him. Kana screams for help. Luckily, Shin hears her and quickly runs to the scene. Kana rushes toward him for safety, and Shin angrily asks Hideo what he is doing. Hideo calmly says he only wanted to talk with Kana because she seems very perceptive. Shin warns him that if anything happens to the people around him, he will kill Hideo first. Hideo repeats that he has no intention of fighting and quietly walks away, though he notices a weak signal coming from Shin's right hand. Kana thanks Shin for helping her. Just then, Murano passes by. Kana loudly asks Shin to walk her to the station because she feels scared. Shin agrees, but when he turns around, he sees Murano running away. He realizes he made a mistake, but he cannot leave Kana alone now. While walking to the station, Kana tells Shin that she can somehow sense his presence. However, she admits that her ability felt strange today. Shin warns her that this ability is dangerous because the signal she senses comes from something harmful. He tells her it would be better if she stayed away from it. When Shin returns home, he finds his father still drinking heavily. Kazu sadly asks how Shin became so strong and says it feels like Shin is made of steel. Those words hurt Shin deeply. The next day, Kana ignores Shin's warning. When she senses the signal again, she turns around expecting to see Shin, but instead finds Hideo. She quickly tries to leave. Just then, Mitsuo arrives and angrily accuses Hideo of following Kana. Even though Kana tells him to stop, Mitsuo insists on fighting and follows Hideo to a quiet place. There, Hideo easily defeats him and warns him never to bother him again, or he will kill him next time. However, Mitsuo does not realize that Shin's friend Takai has secretly been following them because she has developed a crush on him. Meanwhile, Shin goes to school and stands near the notice board where he first met Murano, but she ignores him again. Hideo is also nearby and senses the faint signal from Migi. This makes him suspicious. He even releases a bit of killing intent to see if Shin reacts, but Shin shows no reaction, which confuses him. Later, Shin returns home and finds his father speaking with a government officer. The officer believes Kazu's story about the monster, but says they cannot reveal it to the public because it would cause panic. He explains that parasites are like wild monsters hiding among humans. They also draw a sketch based on Kazu's description, and the picture clearly shows the creature's face. At the same time, Tamiya meets another intelligent parasite after changing her appearance. She says that if parasites continue eating humans without thinking, they will eventually be hunted. The other parasite agrees and believes parasites may exist to control the human population. Later, Kazu tells Shin everything about the attack. Shin listens quietly, but does not reveal anything about Migi. Elsewhere, the artist who drew the parasite sketch turns out to be Takai's brother. One night, Takai secretly looks at his notebook and sees the drawing. Her brother wakes up and quickly takes it back, saying it is part of an investigation. The next day, Takai watches Hideo again. Suddenly, a stray baseball hits Hideo's head and leaves a dent, but he quickly recovers. This shocks Takai and makes her realize something is very strange about him. Meanwhile, Shin decides to talk to Murano and fix their relationship. But before he can do that, Migi warns him that Hideo is about to become hostile. Mitsuo's gang has come for revenge, and Hideo is ready to kill them. Shin immediately runs to stop him. Hideo tells the boys to attack all at once because he does not want to wait for Shin. Suddenly, Shin jumps over the wall and arrives there. Hideo is shocked at how fast he came. Shin tells him to leave because he will handle the situation himself. Hideo listens and calmly walks away while the thugs keep insulting him. The gang then mocks Shin for protecting Hideo, but Shin angrily replies lies that Hideo is not his friend. Shin tells the boys to go home and never bother Hideo again for their own safety. Mitsuo seems ready to believe him, but the other boys do not. Shin then challenges the strongest one among them to fight. The boy suddenly attacks, but Shin easily blocks his punch. When Shin is about to crush his arm to scare everyone, the boy realizes how strong Shin really is. He quickly runs away and tells the others to follow him because they cannot win. After that, Shin returns to school and finds Murano waiting for him while holding his bag. They are about to make up, but suddenly Shin pulls her close because Hideo is nearby. Hideo asks what Shin did to the bullies, but Shin angrily says it is none of his business. Hideo quietly walks away. Murano then tells Shin that he is hurting her hand. Shin apologizes and lets go, explaining that Hideo may look normal, but is dangerous inside. Murano tries to calm him down, but she says he has changed a lot. She tells him the old Shin would never speak like this and asks if he is really the same person. Shin suddenly gets angry and yells at her to stop talking. Hurt by his words, Murano runs away crying. Later, Shin sits alone feeling depressed. He believes the empty feeling inside him comes from the pain he still carries. Migi tries to comfort him and says Shin has become stronger, both physically and mentally, and that he should not worry about what other people think of him. Meanwhile, Takai is still secretly following Hideo. One day, she finally sees him change his face, which terrifies her. She remembers stories about monsters that can change their faces and decides to ask her older brother about them. Her brother explains that such monsters can take over human bodies and eat people. After hearing this, Takai begins to believe that Hideo might really be a monster, but she is still unsure. Instead of telling anyone, she decides to talk to Hideo herself. The next day at school, she calls him to meet her and secretly brings a bottle of acid for protection. When Hideo arrives and asks why she called him, Takai says she once liked him, but recently saw him doing strange things. She nervously asks if he is really a monster who eats people. Hideo asks what she would do if that were true. Takai tells him he should just go home and not hurt anyone. Hideo becomes angry because she has discovered his secret. He suddenly transforms and prepares to kill her. At the same time, Migi senses the danger and warns Shin. Shin gets furious at Takai for putting herself in danger and immediately runs out of class to find her. Meanwhile, Takai panics when she sees Hideo's true form. He tells her not to move and promises a painless death if she obeys. He attacks, but she accidentally trips and avoids his strike. In desperation, she throws the acid bottle at him. Hideo slices the bottle in the air, but the acid splashes onto his face and burns him badly. Hideo screams in pain as his body begins to change even more. Takai quickly escapes through a window. Students outside notice her and she jumps down in fear. Luckily, a tree breaks her fall and the students rush to help her. Inside the building, Hideo starts losing control because the acid has damaged his body. His face becomes twisted and he cannot think clearly. Migi senses his confused thoughts and tells Shin they must hurry. At that moment, teachers and students upstairs run into Hideo in his transformed state. Without thinking, he kills them and runs away. The surviving teachers see the horrifying scene and immediately raise the alarm and call the police. Migi then senses that Hideo is heading towards Shin's classroom. Shin rushes back, but the school is already full of panicking students trying to escape. Migi suggests leaving safely with the crowd, but the teachers realize one class is still missing. Shin realizes that the attack happened in Morirano's class, so he quickly runs to find her. While going upstairs, he sees many students running down in fear, but Morirano is not among them. Shin refuses to believe that he has lost her. When he finally reaches the floor, he sees many dead bodies lying everywhere. For a moment, his mind goes blank, and he screams in shock. Migi tells him to calm down and control his breathing. Shin remembers how his father and Morirano once said that he had changed. He realizes that he is not the same person anymore. Soon, he regains his focus and decides that he will save Morirano by killing Hideo himself. Shin moves forward and suddenly sees someone who looks like Morirano. His heart stops for a second, but when he gets closer, he realizes it is another girl. Feeling relieved, he continues searching. Using his sharp hearing, he locates 3 people nearby. When he reaches them, he finally finds Morirano among them. As soon as Morirano sees Shin, she hugs him tightly. Shin tells her they must leave the school quickly. The 2 other boys there panic because they know the massacre happened from the direction Shin came from. They think he might be one of the monsters, so they run the other way. But sadly, Luckily, they are instantly killed. Shin realizes that Hideo is very close. He quickly grabs Morirano and runs into an empty classroom. From there, he jumps out of the window, leaps over the school fence, and takes her to a safe place. Morirano is still very scared and shaking, so Shin gently comforts her. After that, he leaves her with the emergency team and goes back towards the school. By now, the police have surrounded the entire area, making it hard to enter. Migi asks Shin if he still wants to fight. Shin says it is their responsibility to stop Hideo. Migi believes the police will handle it, but Shin sees Hideo killing many officers and escaping to the rooftop even though he is injured. Shin decides the best way to defeat him is from far away. He moves about 300 meters away so Hideo cannot notice him. He waits patiently until Hideo appears on the rooftop. Then Shin combines his strength with Migi's perfect aim and throws a rock like a bullet. The rock flies straight and pierces Hideo's heart. Soon after, the police find his dead body. Later, the news reports say that Hideo had a drug problem and went crazy, killing many students. The government hides the truth about parasites. Migi thinks this is a smart decision because it is almost impossible to tell parasites and humans apart. After the incident, Shin and Morirano become closer. Shin never tells her the real truth about what happened. He only says he jumped from the 3rd floor because of adrenaline, and she believes him. Meanwhile, Kana reads the news about the school attack and remembers Shin warning her about danger. This makes her wonder if Shin is somehow connected to the incident. Suddenly, Kana senses Shin nearby. She quietly sneaks up behind him and tries to pull out one of his hairs to test him. Shin quickly stops her and tells her that doing that is bad manners. After a moment, he finally allows her to do it. Kana pulls out a hair, but nothing strange happens. Since there is no reaction, she feels relieved and decides to keep the hair as a good luck charm. Kana then walks with Shin and asks if he knows anything about Hideo. Shin simply denies it. At the same time, Shin wonders if he should trust Kana with the truth because she seems a little special. However, he knows that Migi is awake and would not approve of revealing their secret. So instead, Shin warns Kana that if she ever senses his presence again, she should stay away because she might run into a monster. Kana laughs and says she can just pull someone's hair to check. This makes Shin very angry. He suddenly pushes her against the wall and shouts at her, telling her never to do something so dangerous. After a moment, he calms down and explains that the method is risky and could get her killed. Kana secretly feels happy because Shin is clearly worried about her safety. Just then, Migi tells Shin that they need to talk. Shin quickly runs away, not noticing that Morirano saw the whole scene from a distance. While Shin leaves, Migi warns him that he should stop talking to Kana because he is giving her too many hints. Meanwhile, Kana meets Morirano and they start talking. Morirano asks Kana if she also feels that Shin has changed a lot recently. Kana replies that Shin has always been intense and fierce like that. Kana can tell that Morirano likes Shin, but her worried face shows that things are not going well between them. This secretly gives Kana hope that she might still have a chance. In another part of the city, a huge muscular man, wearing only underwear and a tank top, walks into a Yakuza office. He calmly asks the guard how many people are inside. The guard tells him to leave, but the man refuses with a strange smile. When a gangster attacks him, the man smashes his head against the wall and walks inside. Inside the building, he starts killing everyone. He easily dodges bullets and tears people apart with his bare hands. At one point, a man cuts him with a sword, but he breaks the sword and throws it into another man's head. During the fight, he even counts every time he gets hit. In the end, he is hit only 3 times and proudly says it is a good result. The Parasyte explains he was just testing his strength against an armed group before killing them all. Later, Shin and Morirano go on their first date, but the situation becomes awkward. Morirano says Shin has changed a lot and wonders if he is really the same person who returned from the trip. When she mentions the trip, Shin suddenly gets up and leaves for a moment. Later, they sit on a bench and see a child crying because he cannot keep up with his mother. The tired woman gets angry and tries to slap him. This reminds Shin of painful memories about his own mother, and he starts talking about the empty hole in his heart. Morirano calls his name, and he slowly calms down. As they walk home, Shin wonders if merging with Migi's cells has taken away some of his emotions. Still, he believes his feelings for Morirano are real. At that moment, Kana senses Shin and runs toward him, but she arrives just in time to see him kissing Morirano. Her heart breaks, and she quietly walks away. Later, Kana calls Shin and asks to meet him the next day. When Shin arrives at the station, Migi suddenly senses 5 other parasites nearby, making Shin nervous because facing so many at once is very dangerous. Migi tells Shin that the parasites nearby have also noticed him, but they do not seem hostile yet. As they get closer, Mizji senses a total of 8 parasites, 6 on the stage and 2 standing below. Shin carefully looks at the stage and sees a mayoral candidate giving a speech about protecting the environment while his supporters stand around him. Shin starts wondering which of them are actually parasites hiding among humans. Suddenly, Shin's eyes meet the muscular man who earlier massacred the gangsters. Both of them instantly recognize each other as parasites. Shin becomes nervous, but Mizji stays calm and says the man probably will not attack because he does not seem interested in fighting right now. Even so, Shin decides it is safer to leave the area quickly. While trying to get away, Shin suddenly runs into Kana. He asks her why she is there. Kana gets annoyed and says it is a silly question because she lives nearby and she is the one who called him. Only then does Shin remember that she had asked to meet him earlier. Now he becomes even more worried because dangerous parasites are close by. Later, Shin and Migi return home and talk about the politician Hirakawa. They wonder if he is a parasite and why someone like him would want to become a mayor. Migi says it is possible that Hirakawa truly wants the job and might even become a good mayor, but he also suggests that Hirakawa might be trying to create a safe place where parasites can live among humans. Hearing this suddenly makes everything clearer to Shin. Shin then starts thinking about Kana again. He remembers how she once said she could sense the same strange feeling from several people behind him. This memory makes Shin even more worried about her safety. The next day, Shin goes to secretly check Hirakawa's base to see how many parasites might be hiding there. However, he runs into Kana again. Shin decides to talk to her and asks if she sometimes feels the same strange sensation from other people. Kana says it does happen sometimes with random people. When Shin tells her to stay away from people who give her that strange feeling, Kana refuses and demands to know the reason. She asks if it is connected to parasites. Just then, Mitsuo arrives and says he wants to talk to Kana. Shin steps away and tells Kana that they will talk seriously later and that he will text her. Kana again says that she can always feel when Shin is nearby, which makes Mitsuo jealous. Later, Migi asks Shin if he is really thinking about telling Kana the truth. Shin admits that he is considering it. Migi immediately warns him that if Kana ever becomes a threat to their secret, he will have to kill her because protecting their identity is the most important thing. Meanwhile, Kana keeps thinking about Shin. One night, she suddenly feels his presence and rushes outside to find him, but instead, she runs into a creepy woman and gets scared. She quickly runs away. Soon after, she receives a message from Shin asking to meet the next day. They meet at an abandoned building. Shin hits the wall to make sure Migi falls asleep so he cannot hear their conversation. Then, Shin tells Kana the truth about parasites and about Migi living in his hand. However, Kana does not believe him and thinks he is lying because he now has a girlfriend. Later, Kana secretly follows Shin and Morirano as they walk home. While thinking about Shin, she unknowingly sends out a signal similar to a parasite signal, which Migi immediately senses. The next day, Migi tells Shin about this, and Shin becomes worried because such a signal could attract real parasites and put Kana in danger. Shin then reveals to Migi that he already told Kana the truth while Migi was asleep. He promises that Kana will never betray them and asks Migi to show his real form to her. Surprisingly, Migi agrees, which shocks Shin because it is very unlike him. The next day, Shin plans to meet Kana. However, when he reaches the station, Migi suddenly senses 2 parasites nearby. Shin quickly changes the meeting location and pretends to be talking on the phone so he does not look suspicious. After the parasites leave, he tries to call Kana, but she has already left her phone at home. Meanwhile, Kana wants to prove that her strange ability is real. She decides to find Shin on her own by following the signal she feels. At the same time, Migi senses a parasite signal coming from an abandoned building. Shin immediately realizes that Kana might be heading there, so he rushes toward the place. By coincidence, Kana has already reached the building. She senses someone and thinks it must be Shin, but when she looks inside, she discovers a parasite feeding on a human. Terrified, Kana turns around and tries to run away. The parasite notices her and quickly attacks, injuring her arm. Even while running, Kana believes that Shin will come to save her, just like in her dreams. Shin does arrive, but sadly, he is too late. Right before he reaches her, the parasite stabs Kana in the heart. She falls to the ground just as she sees him. Shin becomes silent with rage. He tells Migi to focus only on defense and then charges at the parasite. With incredible force, he smashes it through a wall and kills it by ripping out its heart. After defeating the parasite, Shin rushes back to Kana and lifts her in his arms. But she has already lost too much blood. Kana gently smiles and tells him that she knew he would come. She says it feels just like the dream she once had. With a peaceful smile on her face, Kana dies, while the strand of Shin's hair she kept wrapped around her finger quietly breaks. Shin feels completely devastated, but strangely, he cannot cry. A few days later, Shin attends Kana's funeral. He remains calm the whole time. The police are also there and greet him because they already questioned him earlier, since he was the one who found Kana's body. Shin says very little, and the officers understand why he does not like them. Still, they wonder who killed the parasite that attacked Kana. Later, Shin walks home while blaming himself for her death, but Migi tells him that Kana's death was only a matter of time. At that moment, Mitsuo appears. He looks messy and heartbroken. He angrily asks Shin why he did not protect Kana and why he looks so calm after her death. Without waiting for an answer, Mitsuo punches him, knocking Shin to the ground. He keeps hitting him and shouting that Kana died because of him. He angrily asks why Shin is not crying and questions if he is even human anymore. Hearing this, Shin suddenly snaps and punches Mitsuo back hard. He shouts that he himself does not know if he is still human and asks why humans have to be so fragile. Before things get worse, Shin stops himself from hitting Mitsuo again and walks away. As he walks, he keeps wondering why he cannot cry. He even starts thinking that maybe Migi has slowly taken over his brain without him realizing it. Later, Shin goes to a park and begins hitting his head against a tree in frustration, but Migi quickly stops him. And that's where this part of the story ends. Shin is now left questioning his emotions after Kana's tragic death, while the threat of parasites is still growing. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more anime recaps. See you in the next one.